Vaughn Kimmons, affectionately known as Brown Alice, is a multidisciplinary artist born and raised in Chicago. Through music and dance performance, she celebrates Blackness as the cosmic source of sacred inspiration and gives voice to the connective power of shared human nuance. She is a vocalist and songwriter in Portland-based bands Brown Calculus and Tribe Mars. Thank you, Vaughn. Thank you for being here.
Of course, thank you. Can you see? Okay. Thank you to all of you for being here. This means a lot to me, and one of the reasons why it means a lot to me is because growing up in Chicago, I always wanted to be an artist. So to now be here in the Portland Art Museum, talking to you guys about things that are important to me, it means a lot. So I take this as a big stride in my life, and I'm very grateful that all of you are here to share this with me. So thank you. I also like to say some more thank yous because my grandmother always taught me to express gratitude for the gifts that I've been given. So I'm grateful to my family, my chosen family as well, or as people like to call them, your friends, my ancestors, future, present, and past, for the work they've done that has brought me to this point. I'd like to express special gratitude to two ancestors who are my spirit guides, and that's my maternal grandmother, Estelle Dixon, and my best friend, Candace Honore. These women are no longer with us in physical form, but their love guides me through this life. It is their love that constantly reminds me of my greatness. It is their love that motivates me to make healthy decisions. It is their love that reminds me that I don't have to accept anyone's crap. That's one of my biggest ones. If you know me, you know. This is why I deeply believe in the power of the gifts that our ancestors taught us. This knowledge is my daily teacher, and I hold it dear as it becomes my personal spirituality. As Black people in this diaspora, we have been robbed of many of our cultural traditions as an attempt to control us and render us powerless. But our ancestors made sure that we could feel their love and know that these traditions that were suppressed still live within us. Our intuition is the spirit of our ancestors. I thank them for setting these intentions so that we may still walk forward with progress. I send my love to my ancestors who were torn from their families. We may be apart, but I still feel your love. We were scattered, but you still live within me, and I live in you. To the African diaspora, I love you. We are each other. I feel your spirit from thousands of miles away, and I see you. I honor my ancestors by carrying on the tradition of doing the intentional work to claim prosperity and health for future generations. I honor my descendants, future generations, for the work they are producing on a different plane as we speak. We carry a collective energy that fosters love. We need this to progress. I respect and honor this progression. So this talk today is basically a meditation for the things that I've been experiencing throughout my life in establishing my self-identity. And I was inspired by the Love and Culture collection, which are these three pieces right here. This tie, necklace, and then for those who didn't get to see the work before the talk started, there's a clutch, a beaded clutch on the other side. And this work is by Tessa Sayers. And as someone who loves personal style, if you can't tell by my over-the-top prints and stuff that I'm wearing currently, the beauty of these pieces is what struck me first. I'm someone who loves to get dressed up. I love to adorn myself. So I was pulled in, before I even read the placard, I was pulled in because of the color and of how striking the pieces are. I immediately wanted to wear all three of them, actually. The bold colors resonated, the intricate beadwork, all of these things scream beauty to me. And if you know me, you know I have a weakness for wearable art. So, I'm also really silly. But there was more than just the beauty about these pieces that intrigued me. It's, of course, at face value, it's like, yeah, it's beautiful, intricate beat work, but for me, it pulled me in a little bit more for other reasons. And it was the intention that Tessa Sayers put into this work. When I read the placards, it just really resonated with me, how she views her culture and how it moves her through her life. So what I loved is that this work has a focus on the healing qualities of cultural tradition. And this is important to me because many people see the art of Black and brown folks simply as something that is supposed to be consumed or something that represents the past. Especially when it comes to work of Indigenous artists, folks often look at it as something that's like a relic instead of something that in the present, which Tessa Sayers actually lives in Portland. So, it's something that is very present in our lives. Indigenous peoples are not an ancient people of the past. They still exist. The term culture vulture has definitely described the tendencies of non-melanated people to attempt to absorb melanated people's traditions without acknowledging the struggles of said people. And this is really dangerous. And the reason why this is dangerous is because it attempts to erase those who fostered the culture. And this is a result of colonialism and white supremacy. Through the absorption of another's culture, oppressors will try to blur the lines of cultural practices, and this leads to a devaluing of those who created it. So basically it's, you create this art or you have these traditions that have been passed down through generations in your family, right? But then someone takes it because they see it and they like the face value beauty of it, and instead of reaching deeper to understand the struggles that are attached to it, they kind of just take the beauty for what it is without digging deeper. And this leads to people's cultures being marketed across like all over the world. This has happened for so many people, especially for Black people. It has happened a lot. And this is something that I would like to see stop. Sarah says that as an artist, her Native American heritage, which is Chippewa, Cree, and Métis is someone who is indigenous and also mixed with European ancestry. And this has become the foundation for her creative work. This work seems to not only represent her culture, but also represents her interests as well as the wellness modalities she instills. It represents her being a full being. And that's something that, unfortunately, Black and brown artists don't always get the privilege of that experience of being a full, multifaceted person. So this work here acknowledges our multifacets through the lens of heritage. And I'm gonna read what it says on the placard. Her love and culture collection is inspired by her affinity for vintage fashion, romantic love, and culture. And that pulled me in right there when I read that. The men's tie and women's necklace feature the same red flower that unites the couple as one. The black background of the tie and white background of the necklace represent duality and contrary energies between genders, highlighting the importance of independence, balance, and strong identity of self. When we heal and honor ourselves, we complement and have the ability to truly love others. So I believe that respecting our uniqueness fosters a strong identity and honors the universe by providing authenticity. So truly allowing an authentic self to manifest is how we open up ourselves to love and to balance. One of my favorite people is, as cliche as this sounds, is Bruce Lee. And the reason why is because he talked about self-actualization and its importance. And that's what really popped in my head as I was looking at her work, because she's using her culture to highlight ways in which we can become healthier versions of ourselves, not these things are beautiful, but it's not to create like this like hologram version of yourself, this projected version of who you are, this just very shallow or surface level of who you are. She uses these techniques to talk about duality in our lives and the importance of being independent people. A buzz term that I always hear, or I've at least heard for the past 6 years, is codependence. I'm sure we've all heard that in relationship to romantic relationships. So the fact that she used parts of her culture to highlight the importance of still being an independent person, I was like, I can get down with that. Like art that, like, not only can I look cute, but you got me thinking about stuff and, got me meditating. Like, yes, girl, I stand behind all of this. So as a child, I always knew I was different from everyone else. I mean, I'm sure you can look at me and tell that I was probably a different kid. And there was struggle and peace in this realization. It was hard for me to be interested in the things that I was interested in because in my neighborhood, growing up in a predominantly Black neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, people are just trying to survive. So sometimes your interests that are outside of the cultural scope aren't always supported. So the good news was my mom was all about the things I was into. She's one of the main reasons why I am the person that I am today and why I'm into so many different things. So even though there was this struggle of me wanting to have other people around me who were also into the same things, I had this confidence, and always have this confidence of being my own person. I innately honored beauty, and then as an adult, I learned to honor beauty and not only what we typically view it to be, but also I can see beauty in what some call our shadow selves. And if you're not familiar with that concept, it's basically like the parts of yourself that are hard to acknowledge at times. It's the moments that aren't happy, that aren't full of joy, the moments where we obsess over things, where we have anxiety, where we have these thoughts that seem like they might be thoughts of someone else, things that make you feel like maybe you're off. But when we acknowledge these parts of ourselves that are the shadow self, we see that it's just parts of who we are. We all have this shadow self. So this is what I seek to reveal in my creative endeavors. I really want people to see that sometimes I feel like the things that stress us out are what brings us together, like closer than the things that bring us joy, because usually these are the things that we don't discuss. So whenever I'm writing lyrics for songs, I try to highlight the things that, if I'm questioning, well, does anybody else go through this? Then yes, I need to write about that. Because whenever you have that doubt of I'm the only one, there's probably like 3 million other people who are feeling exactly the same way. So instead of suppressing, those feelings and leaning on the common things that people tend to celebrate or discuss within art, listening to the other part of your mind that's like, but remember when you got pissed off when that person looked at you that way yesterday? Or, remember how you felt when your friends went to go do something without you, which we call FOMO. But all this stuff is real. We can laugh about it, but it's these responses, these knee-jerk reactions to this self that feels insecure is what makes us who we are. Like, that's how I believe that we relate to one another. And that's why I seek to create art that celebrates that, because I'm a big lover. Like, I know I said I'm somebody who doesn't take a lot of crap. That's true. But it's because I am a big lover. Yeah. So what I like to highlight in the work that I do is the magic of the everyday. And when I say the magic of the everyday, I mean like nuances, not the moments where we're going to brunch with our friends, or the moments where we're celebrating things or listening to our favorite music. But I mean like when we're brushing our teeth, when we wake up in the morning, we're still tired from the night before. When you groom your hair, you know, it's these small things that even though they become our routine, they actually become rituals because we do them so often. So these small things that we take for granted often are our personal spirituality. And the magic of the everyday is so important and so special. We even see it with social media. So with Instagram and with Facebook, we're able to take these tools and celebrate these little small pieces of our lives. I don't know, people are so creative with like Instagram stories. When you follow them and you see them starting their day, they're like, I'm brushing my teeth, I'm going on my commute, I'm doing this, I'm blowing my nose, look at my food. You know, never did I think I would be so in awe of just the regular things that people do. And that's the true magic that I think people miss. You know, we often want to celebrate these big moments, but it's in these smaller moments that I think the true magic lies. And this celebration of the magic of the everyday, that I call it, is important, especially for Black people, because a lot of our traditions as Black Americans in this country were suppressed. So we have to create new traditions in order to have something to pass on to future generations. You know, a lot of Black Americans don't have cultural celebrations in the same way that other ethnic groups have. We don't have like a language that's native to who we are. I mean, unless you're like African American in the sense of your parents, you know exactly what country in Africa your parents are from. If you are the result of being in this country if you're the result of being a descendant of the offspring of enslaved Africans, you don't really have this strong, I would say, like arsenal of rituals. We have things, of course, that are Black American. You know, I'm not gonna front and say we don't have a culture, because obviously people are always taking our culture, so they love the things that we do. But when it comes to ancient cultures, you know, trying to reach back and celebrate those things, it's harder because you feel as though you're reaching all over a continent. How do you pull from a continent and celebrate who you are, you know? Recently, I read something that there are some Africans, you know, who live in Africa right now who feel as though Black Americans are appropriating their culture. And I don't have too much to really speak on that because that's not my experience, but it's interesting to feel like a nomad or like a vagabond, almost as if you don't belong anywhere. You exist in this in-between. So that is why it's important for me to celebrate things that are just pretty mundane and normal, is because that's what I have, you know? That's what's been passed down to me from my mom and my grandmother. So how do we use our heritage as a compass, not just a list of things that our great-grandmother, you know, used to do? This is how I believe we develop a strong self-identity, which Sayers speaks on. My life is devoted to translating, instilling, and implementing my culture into all aspects of my life. You know, the way that I dress, like the way my hair looks. Africa is always on my mind, you know? It's something that's always a constant because I feel like it's my duty to push it forward, whether people like it or not, because I really don't care. But I'm devoted to creating new traditions and cultural shifts And this is important because it allows us the space to cater tradition to the current needs of our situation. So one of my favorite musicians is Sun Ra, and he had a short film that he released in the 50s called The Cry of Jazz. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because he talks about, basically the film is saying that jazz is dead. And as much as you want to like put your hand over your heart, like, but I just bought all these Coltrane albums or whatever. Like, the reason why he was saying that jazz is dead is because jazz was a response to what Black people were going through at the time that it was created. So can we still call the things in the music that we produce now jazz if we're not necessarily going through those same things? How can we respond to what's happening in our lives right now? How do we create an art form that resonates with ourselves, but also may resonate with the future generation? So with this video that's playing, which I'd like to thank my cousin Rashonda Brooks for filming this and helping me create this. It means a lot because, yeah, thanks Rashonda. Everybody say, hey Rashonda. She doesn't like being put on the spot, so I did it on purpose. But so this video that's playing that features the two beautiful Black women grooming their hair. This seeks to highlight hair grooming as a meditation on tradition as a driving force in the development of self-identity. So hair grooming for me as a Black woman is a tradition that seeks to put me first. It's a way that I honor myself in a world that doesn't see fit to honor me. As a kid, like getting my hair done was a big to do. And it taught me self-care, independence, never having to rely on someone else, but also taught me that it's a practice in balance. It taught me how I can not only do my hair myself, but I also have the freedom to lean on someone else. And that's, as you see in the film, you'll see that they start oiling each other's hair. And so not only is this tradition that's been passed through generations help me just so I can like have healthy hair, but it also teaches me how to depend on somebody else and have that freedom and relinquish that freedom sometimes to be taken care of. I know that when I was a little kid, having my older sister do my hair was a special event because she was an accomplished in my eyes because she braided my hair all the time, you know. She was an accomplished hair braider. So there was this art that was just this thing that she was just doing for me so my hair would be like neat. But it also let me know that she cared for me too. My sister's not one of those people to say like, I love you like that. So her doing my hair was usually the way in which I felt that love from her. So it was this important interaction that we had. And the funny thing about her too was when I was a kid, if I sat down at her feet with like the hair oil and the clips and the barrettes, and she started parting my hair, if she didn't see a style in her head immediately, she would send me away. Like I would sit down and she would be parting and I'm like, yeah, I'm about to be cute at school tomorrow. And then she'd be like, go away, I'm not inspired. And she would just send me away. Like, go away, I'll do it another day, I'm not inspired. Oh man, so good. And this concept that I was talking about of relinquishing this freedom to someone else or giving someone this like trust to do your hair. This really got highlighted for me in this book that I read recently by Bell Hooks. It's not a new book, but the book is called Sisters of the Yam. And in this book, she teaches or discusses how Black women have been conditioned to be everyone's everything. And this is an unfair role. And it definitely made me think about that in my life. And as someone who's always working to strengthen my self-identity, because I feel like that's how I can be the healthiest version of myself, I realized that I too, even though I'm not a mother or a caretaker, that I have a tendency to fall into trying to be everyone's everything. And I saw it with my mother and with my grandmother and just Black women that I know now, is we do so much, provide so much labor, often emotional labor, for others at the expense of ourselves. Sometimes I feel like that concept of being, people will applaud one another for being selfless. And I feel like actually being selfless is not a good thing. Of course, have your own views on that, but being selfless means that there is no self. And if you can't put yourself first, then how do you begin to take care of other people? This selfless role is a concept that has become dangerous to our existence as Black women. It doesn't give us a space to be depressed, to be anxious, to be anything other than what people want us to be. There's this view of Black women as these strong, always tough, maybe kind of mean, personality. And when we think about it, where does that come from? Why has this stereotype come to be? And the reason why is because it was a survival tactic. Every Black woman's not angry and not depressed, but there's a lot who are. And the reason is because we have been put in a place to care for everyone but ourselves. So that creates a bitterness sometimes in people. So if you ever do see, a Black woman who might be a little irritated by something, before you're tag, angry Black woman, yeah, she might be, but think about the reasons why she might be angry. There's not always a person to listen to how she feels, because we have this perception to be strong people that often people don't check in with people who they perceive to be strong. And often those are the people who are hurting the most. This concept forces us to be seen through the perspective of others, and it forces Black women to be caretakers, even though every Black woman doesn't want to be a mother. You know what I mean? Being everyone's everything is basically placing a mother role, even when you don't want any children. And I mean children not necessarily in the sense of actual biological children, but in just taking care of people and volunteering your time and your space to others. So we become everything for everyone, but at a cost of who we genuinely are. It's hard to give yourself space to be your most genuine self when other people put pressure on you to provide for them. And this is something that I seek to destroy, is Black women being everyone's everything. And then also Black women accepting that it's okay not to be everyone's everything. So some people have been in this role for so long that they don't even see that it's hurting them, I've known many Black women in my life, aunts and people in my neighborhood and other family members who just seem to have people might think they have a chip, but it's really this pain that they never learn how to process. So back to the video. Hair grooming has taught me that there is room for me to thrive as an individual, but then I can also, as you see right here with her parting her hair, I can stand on my own or I can lean on my community. Allowing someone to style your hair is an act of submitting your trust to the universe. Because you'll notice in the video, when you see their faces, they appear joyful and they feel at home with one another. And even though they didn't even know each other prior to this video, this shared tradition created a feeling of home, and it made it a sacred space. They shared stories of experiences growing up of how they did their hair. They shared experiences of when people reach out and just touch their hair without asking. There's a lot of sacredness in a shared tradition. Recognizing home in another person speaks to the healing properties of heritage. When I can look at you and I see my reflection, that already makes me feel 1,000 times more comfortable. And I feel like that's a sacred act. So taking a closer look into passed down traditions helps us to see their importance in cultivating a balanced life. We see how it sustains us. So taking time to care for yourself, as we know, is a revolutionary act. It's something that calms us down and it gives us time to reflect. For every action we make is a reflection of what's happening internally. So traditions become more than just celebrations. They become our daily spiritual practices, which I was talking about earlier. And this is hair grooming is my meditation, and it's a ritual that brings me closer to myself. So, new traditions are an important component of establishing a self-identity because we carry the stories of self in our community. We carry within us our ancestors and their trauma, but we also carry their joy. So often we want to learn all the ancient, traditions, all the ancient spiritual systems, but really, I feel that we need to focus on creating new traditions because not only do we hold these stories of our ancestors, but we hold the ones of ourselves and of future generations. So we actually do ourselves a disservice if we don't push to create something new that resonates with the new generation. And this new experience requires new rituals, new wellness modalities that are rooted in tradition. Going back to talking about Bell Hooks and her book, Sisters of the Yam, with grooming being a form of protection. So in creating new traditions, how do we take old ones and look at them in a different light? So she says that a lot of Black women have this pressure of looking neat and looking so well kept for people and being clean and tidy and not smelling and having manners and doing all this. She says that our parents placed this on our lives because it was a form of protection from white supremacy. And when I say this, you're kind of like, okay, how does grooming yourself protect yourself from white supremacy? And the way in which it does is, if there's a stereotype about Black people being dirty and not being seen as clean, the way in which you challenge it is by being the cleanest person on the block, the neatest, the clothes with the least amount of wrinkles, to a point that it becomes a bit obsessive. So something that you were told was actually just a way of taking care of yourself. It's actually a way of protecting yourself against racism. I don't know if anybody else has this. Well, I'm sure everyone does, but I know there's a lot of people who don't have the experience of having to present yourself in a certain way so white people won't think a certain thing about you. That was taught to me as a child from like day one, not necessarily like directly by my mom, like my mom didn't say those words, but it was kind of like, don't act a fool in public because you don't want white people to think that you're bad. And that's a lot of pressure to put on a child, to be this model citizen just for the sake of other people. But this is something that is deeply ingrained in my life. And now I'm learning how to break that. And it's almost as if it's a privilege to be able to be unclean in public, to not use deodorant, you know, like, yeah. Oh man. But I'm still, even though this has happened and grooming was seen as a form of protection, the way in which I flip it and make it a new tradition for myself is actually in the way in which I grow my hair. So having dreadlocks is not something like back in the day that my grandmother really would have liked or my great-grandmother really would have liked, because it wasn't seen as something that was clean and like just very like tight and tidy, because it's unruly. I don't comb my hair. I wash my hair, I oil it, but I don't comb it. So that's the way that I've created a new tradition for myself, is allowing my hair to grow freely and naturally the way in which I want it to, and knowing that at the end of the day, my appearance, even if it threatens someone else, I actually don't care anymore. I used to care as a child, but now I see that it was stifling who I was when I always had to think about what someone else would think of me. So yeah, growing my hair in this way and not straightening my hair, which I don't have a problem with people straightening their hair, but this is an act of resistance for me. And even when it comes to being a musician, I grew up in church. Gospel music was like the thing, you know, but though people still make gospel music, I view gospel music almost as the same thing as when I was talking about jazz being dead, which I'm not saying gospel's dead, but it definitely felt like a response to something that after slavery ended was something that had more importance in uplifting Black people and pushing us forward to do more things in our lives. And though that resonates with me, the way in which I've made this now a new tradition is that I choose to make music that is now my ministry, but it's not through this religious lens. And it's through a perspective which is an answer to what my community and people my age, people who look like me, are going through right now. And I'm grateful that I actually have the privilege to create new traditions, because some people don't necessarily have that privilege either. Oh, my bad. All my hair grooming, I'm messing up with the mic. So I wanted to do a little activity. If everybody's into it, don't worry, you don't have to get up or anything like that. But I basically want us to think of ourselves as ancestors. So I know we're all still alive. We're still in this room. You know, I don't know, some of y'all might be projecting other places and stuff right now. You know, that's cool. But I want us to begin to think about what it means to create new traditions for the next generation that will strengthen their self-identity so they can be the healthiest versions of themselves. I don't know if that's ever in your mind, but I think about that a lot, y'all. So this would be a little bit like a meditation. So if everyone's into it, I'm just gonna have everybody close their eyes. I won't do anything crazy. I'm just gonna sit here and speak to you, so. So everyone close their eyes and Think about a tradition that you observe that strengthens your connection with yourself. And is this tradition a particular celebration? Is it a gathering? Does the tradition involve sharing a meal with others? Is it a ritual that honors a particular time, achievement, season, a person, an object? What's the environment like? Does this tradition take place indoors or outdoors? How does this tradition make you feel? What has it taught you? Now imagine you have the space to create new traditions for the next generation, that you are the ancestor. What do you want to tell the next generation of your cultural community? What should they know? What do you want to teach them? What do you envision for them? Would you like to apologize to them for anything? How will your new tradition get this message across? Is the tradition a self-care ritual? Is it a celebration or reflection? Why do you feel this new tradition is important? Take a minute to think on this as you create your new cultural tradition. How can you implement these new traditions now? How do you plant the seeds? Do you even feel it's your responsibility to carry on messages to your descendants? How will you personalize this tradition so that it is a response to what your community is going through currently? Can you recognize when a tradition is no longer reflective of your needs? Do you know that you have the power to break free from traditions that don't serve you any longer? You have the freedom and the power not to let unhealthy traditions bind you. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So I want to invite everybody to do a little, I wouldn't call it homework, but of course I want to call it that because I want to feel like a teacher right now. But But I invite you to, when you have the time, even if it's something you do in your mind, that's fine. Even if you got to do it on your phone, even if you do it when you sit on the toilet, whatever. But I invite everyone to write a letter to your descendants. And this doesn't mean necessarily meaning that you'll have kids, but your descendants meaning the next generation of your ethnic group, of your community. And meditate on it. All these new traditions that you formulated, maybe let them know about it. And then place it on your altar if you have one, or keep it somewhere special. And then let this tradition reach the next generation through your intention. Be strong in yourself so that you and your community may thrive. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, y'all. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks to all of you. And I believe now we can open it up to Q&A. Is that correct? There's a mic. Or there will be a mic. I got distracted. I didn't even get to grease my head up, y'all. I was getting into talking to y'all.
We have a microphone for Q&A so everyone can hear each other's questions.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm just curious on your thoughts, particularly on appropriation. What would you like if someone saw you and was inspired and they just start mimicking, if you will, out of appreciation? What would be your recommendation so that it doesn't feel like appropriation to the people who are observing it, and then so that the person who's doing it is honoring the tradition that it came from?
Right, that whole appropriation versus appreciation. It's usually really easy to tell when somebody's appropriating and not appreciating. And when I see people, what appropriation looks like to me is someone, like you said, mimicking another culture or trying to embody it instead of educating themselves on the struggles or the history of that particular group. Sometimes people just like the pretty things, the shiny things that they like to grab. I think I would tell someone who maybe falls in the line of appropriating to just ask themselves some questions about why they're doing what they're doing. I know often, which is a go-to one, is people wear a lot of indigenous headdresses and things like that. I would ask someone if they understand what this dress or this dance or whatever it is, if they understand what it means in the context of the culture. Or did they just like it because it was cute? Yeah, that one's hard. Appropriation, oof. Yeah, because some people will try to argue and say that they are appreciating something, or it's just clothes or just this. But then that right there, when someone comes with that argument, it shows them that they've already devalued you and devalued your culture. So I would tell someone they would need to ask a few questions about themselves and why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
I have two questions.
Sure.
The first one is, I too grew up on the south side of Chicago.
Oh, nice.
Where did you grow up?
In Chatham, the Chatham neighborhood, 87th and Harper.
I know it well. Nice place.
Sweet.
And my second one is, what do you think of Beyonce's blonde hair? Is that is that appropriation, appreciation, or is that something else?
I wouldn't. It's so funny to have certain people singled out. When it comes to people dyeing their hair a certain color, there's black people with blonde hair, So for dyeing your hair a certain color, to me is not even reaching the it's not even really getting that deep into into appropriation because there's so many people that have blonde hair. You know, what would she be appropriating? Like, what do you think? Do you think she's appropriating a specific culture?
Well, I do think it sort of speaks to white supremacy a little bit, that she's appropriating the blonde hair, which is seen to be sort of superior in terms of beauty, and that she's trying to appropriate that.
I see. Well, is it appropriation, or is it that someone's been taught that yeah. And that kind of goes to what I was talking about with Black women in grooming and having to be this certain version of themselves. I would argue that it's more so that it's kind of a not saying that it's right, but like I said, I think people dyeing their hair whatever color they want to is like fine. But I think it's almost like a defense mechanism or like survival tactic. But also, maybe you just woke up and you wanted your hair to be blonde too. So I think until I really know like why Beyonce wanted to dye her hair blonde, which I think her natural hair is not even that dark anyway, but without knowing her reason, I can't really speak on it.
So I thought it was, thank you. My name's Celia. Thank you for coming. That was really fun.
Thanks.
I have a question which is possibly unanswerable, but Henry Louis Gates Jr. wrote about the kitchen and how for him, the icon of black male beauty was Nat King Cole, because he had such beautiful wavy hair that was just so gorgeous. And then I think, and the reason I'm asking this question is, which I haven't gotten to yet, but because you were talking about some traditions, they just become obsolete and have to fall away. And so what I'm thinking about right now is, somebody just told me today, oh, Trump is going to win again because there's so many people who hate so much that he's just going to be a shoo-in. And I was thinking, what you were talking about of the image you have of someone an ancestor, say, or a tradition that you want to pass on, and it was putting that with what you were talking about, the image of a person. And I feel as though Obama, who was up to just recently, sort of for a lot of people, an image like that, or Michelle Obama, that maybe that has just simply also kind of entered the past, that is now. And so then who might be someone who could sort of be a person like that for us right now? And I think that might be an impossible question to ask, but I think it's a really interesting, like, what would be an image of strength, of drawing on the strength of heritage and tradition, and at the same time giving us a new way of thinking to go forward, to continue to try to hope and resist?
You're saying, what does it look like?
I'm wondering if you have in mind an image or a person who sort of represents, and I don't mean like it doesn't have to be an actual biological person right now, because then that kind of maybe fetishizes them, but an image for that kind of hope and empowerment and strength for.
I can't say that there's a particular person or image, because then that would have me speaking for everybody. You know what I mean? And that's why I kind of have the exercise of everybody envisioning it for themselves and for their own culture, because, yeah, I can't speak to what kind of, because I don't believe in saviors. So I don't have a person that I can think of that I believe will create these new traditions for everyone and just push us on forward. I think it's a personal responsibility for us to do that, like each person. You know, like it's on us. We can't look to somebody to be like, save us, you know, because that has never worked. So yeah, it's more of personal responsibility. I think you have to see that leader in yourself.
Relative to Beyonce doesn't have to answer to anybody. She said, well, let's try blonde hair. Why not?
The B tribe is in here. Just kidding. Exactly, people can do whatever they want to do. Oh, hi.
Well, first of all, I thank you. I think that everything you said, and I feel like any black woman here will probably relates to what you said, especially that, like, all that pressure of, you know, since like a really young age. I even was telling Victor that, you know, I used to like do this to my nose every single day so that it would be pointy and it looked like not that black, because that what my mom told me, like, you know, you couldn't.
I feel you.
That's like, even that thing, like, people don't have a single idea of how many things we do daily to be able to avoid any type of confrontation or violence, or even, you know, lose jobs and just to conform to white supremacy.
Exactly.
It's just fucking exhausting.
Yeah.
It's what it is. So I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for speaking and trying to explain what that struggle is like, but also that twist that you do in those old traditions. And I wanted to ask you, like, Portland seems like a really progressive city. However, I always feel like there's like a liberal moderate that's like, how did Trump win and people don't went out to the Capitol and just, like, you know, so sometimes, like, just you think like, whoa, what's going on? And I feel like it's an unfair question to you. I feel like people should be like asking themselves, what am I doing, or can I do more to dismantle white supremacy and not have like minorities come up with the answer.
Yeah.
But however, what have been your challenges navigating through this progressive city, and how do you think spaces like this museum or people here can help become better allies to other minorities?
Whew. Moving here definitely was, it was a little bit of a culture shock. But even though it was a culture shock, it's kind of like I knew what I was going to be getting myself into, you know, when I moved here. I knew it wasn't as many like black and brown folks, but I knew that they were here, because what often is people will be like, oh, there's no black people in Portland. And it's like, okay, you're just going to ignore all the black people that live here? You know, it's like, I'm right here. But I definitely have had struggles regarding my hair when it comes to jobs. I always believe that professionalism is Eurocentric. Like the whole idea of being professional and like how your clothes are supposed to fit and how your hair is supposed to look. Everybody can't fit in those boxes. Yeah, I worked a job where the president of the company told me in front of a group of like people who were touring our office that he was talking about how a wonderful singer I was. But at the same time, he chopped me down and said, I was like, oh, you're gonna make me blush, when he was talking about how good of a singer I was. And he's like, oh, I don't want you to blush. I'm just trying to get you to comb your hair. And then like the whole tour group laughed and they all walked away. I mean, of course, I no longer work at this place. But I've had a hard time navigating some of those things living here. But the thing that has made me a stronger person and now doesn't have me just think about those things all the time is that I have a community that is a reflection of who I am, you know? Also, when you move from another place, you want to learn the history of where you're moving to. You know, like I didn't want to move here and just be like, oh, I'm about to change things. I'm gonna cultural revolution up in here. You know, you have to acknowledge what people are going through who are already here, and then work with them to create these new traditions. You know, so that's kind of my thing right now is how do I take up a space as a black person, but how do I not take up a space as a person who's not from here, so that I can help the people who are from here get whatever it is that they want, strengthen their community. Yeah, wait, I forgot your other question too, though.
I think how people think.
Yep.
I think I had to apply that too. There we go. So how do you think people or spaces like us
can be allies.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is it's so hard to do, but it's moving past uncomfortable feelings of if somebody says a comment that it's problematic, speaking up and telling them that's not cool. Even if it's your closest friend, even if it's your best friend, telling them that's not cool. I think it's this fear that we have sometimes of like shaking things up and confrontation that keeps us quiet. But also a lot of us are fearful of what will happen to us too. So I understand that, but it's it's these really small things. It's like not white people asking a black person what they can do to help. That's one thing. You know, it's like white people talking to other white people about what they can do, them calling each other out on stuff. I think that's the best way. What did my friend say? She wants somebody to be an accomplice, not an ally. You know? I want you to be side by side with me, not like, you know, just like, oh yeah, girl, I got your back. Like, no, I want you to be like doing it with me. So yeah, the biggest way to be an ally is to educate people who look like you, not ask black people what they should be doing to help. You know what I mean? Like, yes. Putting in the labor, turning it back to yourself, doing some quick Googles. You know, like to learn. Google is your friend. If you want to know some topics, you know, some phrases. Of course, it goes beyond Google. You don't want Google for everything, but it's not just saying you're an ally, and it's not just hashtag activism. It's not just activism on Instagram. It's like, what are you doing to show up in real life, to check people when they say messed up stuff? That's one of the most important things, I think, to me. Read more bell hooks, yes.
And any other questions?
Hello.
Hi, Jeremy.
It's really interesting to me that you brought up the topic of like selflessness and martyrdom, because I just like got myself caught up like last night in a situation where I was like really stepping into that role, and I've been thinking a lot for the last 24 hours about like, how to deprogram those like tendencies to step into selflessness.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if you have anything to speak on about like how you've done that work yourself.
Actually, I didn't start doing the work until I realized that I was getting irritated by everybody. That's when I saw that I was extremely impacted by racism, was when everything irritated me. Somebody said they liked my hair and I was irritated. Somebody, you know, looked at me a certain way, I'm irritated. You comment on anything about me, I'm irritated. So it was these signs in my physical body that told me like, okay, you have to start taking care of yourself, and you can't, you don't last that long when you're selfless, because you're selfless. You don't even have a self, like, who even are you then? You know, you are just the community, and of course we are the community, but in order to have a strong community, we have to be strong individuals, you know? People always say that individualism is a like Western concept, which I believe it is, but I think it's when it's the focus just put on being an individual, that's where things get a little problematic, but yeah. I would say taking a step back and asking yourself why you do the things you do for people. Why should it be at cost to yourself? Like asking, like, who does this for me?
And a final question?
Hey. Yeah.
Thank you so much for yes, thank you. I am curious when or like how long it took, or if maybe you still are, when did you appreciate the shadow self?
Oh my gosh.
And yeah.
Oh gosh. I don't think I really appreciated that until I moved to Portland. And the reason why is because it's kind of like my move here was the first time I lived away from Chicago. So I couldn't just like walk to my mom's house anymore and like vent to her about stuff. I kind of had to deal with stuff as it happened. So trying to be an adult who knows how to take care of themselves, that's when I like stepped into knowing who the shadow self was. But I always knew it was there because I'm a very outgoing person, but I've always been a person who kind of spent a lot of time by myself. So when I was a kid, I was very familiar with it because when I was mad at my sister, I used to like do like crazy stuff to the dolls that I had. bad. So I knew I had this other side that was just like, rah, the rage, you know. But yeah, it was moving here to Portland and being thrusted into a place where I didn't have family around me, where I had to deal with my own problems and I couldn't just dump them on people. Yeah. And then having other friends who needed a lot from me emotionally then made me also think about that shadow self too, because it made me think about maybe I'm not addressing some things in my life when I saw that other people were going through some things, you know. I've always had a family who's been very supportive, very funny, very like caring, but we don't really talk about a lot of like how we feel or like issues and stuff like that. So seeing other people go through things with their families made me start to question my responses to things and why I do certain things that I do.
So it's kind of like you saw and recognized and then still appreciated it.
Yeah. But it's the last, I would say, year or two where I like full on was like, okay, like accepted it, I looked at it and stopped, like just started telling myself the truth. Because what happens is often we tell ourselves all these stories to get by and to survive, and that like just keeps churning up this pain, you know? Yeah. That was a good question. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.